Hello, every and anybody who might be out there. Don't suppose there's necessarily many of you, but here we are. It is episode zero of the brand stinking new musical podcast. It's a musical journey. We're gonna
Yeah.
go. We're gonna go. Yeah, we're gonna go on a musical journey. And the title that Dan and I, my awesome colleague here, came up with for this musical journey. Hashtag today New Brunswick, tomorrow the world. In as much as we both originate from southern New Brunswick, thereabouts,
hmm
right? So I'm Matt Stranick. You may know me from other talking head videos related to my education work, or you might not. For all intents and purposes, I am Matt from friggin' Fredericton. And I was really, really pleased when my awesome friend here, Dan, agreed to give this whirly gig a try. So, Dan, what's going on, man?
Not too much. I'm just here relaxing in my basement in Halifax, Nova Scotia, where I currently reside.
Now, are
Uh,
you in Halifax proper? Like, I mean, I don't mean to make you stalkable, but I just, I'm not asking for your zip code, but Halifax is kind of a
I'm
larger vicinity, right?
I'm no longer on the peninsula, if that means anything to you.
That does, and
Yeah.
that's well. There you go.
Yeah.
I spent some time in the peninsula,
hmm
South End, Halifax, back in the
Yeah.
day, which I think some of that may inform some of what we're going to talk about here.
hmm
But I guess just kind of as a general background, Dan. I mean, like besides the fact that you and I were friends, you were we at FHS the same time? Is
We
that
were
right?
at, I think you were in the same grade as my sister, I believe.
Correct.
So I was a couple years ahead of you, but we
Right.
would have had like 1 year of crossover in there maybe.
Right,
And then
and then because Fredericton's small, uh,
exactly.
and the people who remain. Did you do the university thing immediately after, Dan, or no?
Yeah, I did a couple years at St. Thomas,
Okay,
basically until my sister finished high school.
yeah,
And then that was when the whole family kind of moved out to Alberta, where I had my own series of adventures playing in crappy bands and working in the hospitality industry for a few years, which led to moving to the West Coast and doing the same there, and then back all the way east again to Newfoundland for a few years. And kind of the same.
so that was so that so
And
so so, so that was what was so that was like the full of your 20s, or are we getting into
yeah, the
your
basically
30s
I
here? Yeah,
spent
yeah, just
the
try to.
full of my 20s. Like I moved away when I was 20. I moved away
Yeah,
from Fredericton,
okay,
and then yeah, I turned 30 after having lived in Halifax for a couple of years. But yeah, the majority of my 20s were spent either on the West Coast or in Newfoundland. So, or like
you
Western Canada and in Newfoundland, and then have been settled down here since 2004, really. And yeah, just living that suburban public servant life for the most part. And I've been decided the past little while that I want to get back into exploring new music again instead of just like, hey, here's these three artists I know that I continue to listen to.
Well,
And
man, I'm appreciative that you consider
mhm,
this as a viable format for this because I mean, again, I've got a pretty wide public imprint with my stuff right now,
yeah,
and some of that is just to do with the fact that like my area of academic work has been for almost 10 years at this point to do with online learning, right?
yeah,
So, the medium is the message and all that,
exactly.
chicanery that goes along with it. But what it ends up, the outputs of that end up, being some academic, some ridiculous, and some sort of in between kind of talking head videos,
hmm
and I just figure, like my kids are going to be kind of living through this path that I'm cutting for them. And I'm just like, man, I can either just kind of scale it all back and lock it all down, or I can just glut the interwebs, and that's the reality we're going to live in, apparently.
hmm
So,
That
I guess so. To in terms of where my perspective is, beyond all
Yeah.
that, I kind of identify as a suburban dad. That's kind of like I consider myself dad first, and then all this other stuff that I have to kind of negotiate to help along with
Hmm.
that. And as a result, that has led to spending a disproportionate amount of money on vinyl records over the past year, which I have documented in true friggin' midlife crisis fashion on an
Hmm.
Instagram.
Yep.
Over the past, like I get record, I get just like, oh, here's a little blog post or whatever about it, and it's completely ridiculous and it's unsustainable, and I don't know that I'll necessarily do it much past actually
Hmm.
getting a real job, because a lot of this for me is unemployment sports as well. Um, but you should totally hire me, higher level university or public college. Okay, there's my disclaimer. And none of this has anything to do with any employment that I have done in the past or will commence to do, should such institutions ever choose to hire me again. There, I'm just punching in the
Yeah.
accountability,
Get your
Dan.
disclaimers in there.
Getting my disclaimers in there. Okay, so now, Dan, you came up with the concepts, episode 0, which is dope. And first of all, I'd like to delve into that a little bit more. But why
Hmm.
don't we start just kind of going through your list, man? Because I haven't heard
Okay.
of any of these artists. I haven't
And
heard of them. So
that was kind of my intent with my list too, because it wasn't like necessarily like, hey, here's what I think are the 5 absolute best albums that came out in 2022. Though I'll admit the first pick that I'm going to mention, it's I've been thinking more and more that this might be my one for the my favorite for the year. Uh, but it's a lot of it is artists that like
hold
either
on, man. I'm sorry. I know you were on a thing. I've
yeah,
literally got a phone call coming in from my kid. I'll be back in 2
that's okay.
seconds. Okay.
All right.
Thanks, son. I guess. Um,
Yeah,
okay, so
it's that dad thing.
I'll put a little card
Yeah.
on the thingy that
So
just now, and we'll carry on. So you were saying, Dan, that
yeah.
okay, we're
Uh,
talking now about in the notes Liverpool's High Viz. Is that correct?
yes, that was the first band that I was going to talk about. Who that's this
Oh,
is
you're
it.
muted, dude.
Oh, am I?
Can't hear you. Because I have the
Oh.
wrong.
All
Now I
right.
can hear you.
There we go.
I might that might be worth leaving in. That might be worth
Yeah.
leaving in. Shits and giggles and
Yeah.
shits. So
Exactly.
about the high viz, for the love of God, please,
Yeah.
Dan.
So I guess the first one that so my intent with my list was it's a lot of stuff that I feel like maybe for the most part hasn't gotten as much attention. My my cheat pick of the 3 solo albums by the members of the one group, I guess, are a little more well known, but still it's something that like I like a lot.
Not recognized in terms of like not appearing on Pitchfork or like
Or
in
like
terms of what? Yeah.
just in terms of like it's well, I guess to if I wanted to jump ahead to that part of the list, I'd pick the 3 solo albums by the members of Griselda, who are just
Okay.
it's a group that I quite enjoy. Who are all folks that sort of have gotten into the music industry a little later in life.
So it's kind of a
Like,
representative of kind of like a certain scene almost,
yeah,
if you will.
exactly. And it
Cool.
crosses over, as I'll get into when I get to that point, it kind of crosses over into other interests of mine as well.
Cool, dope. Well,
Um,
please do
all right.
carry on. Yeah, that's
So, do you want me to just go through the whole list, or did you want to go?
yeah. Well,
Okay.
let's speak to the high viz,
Yeah,
because
sure. Well, I'll go through.
you've written some really awesome notes about it, and
Nice.
then we can sort of see where we end up from there. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, the first band I want to talk about is a band from Liverpool, England called High Viz. Um, and they're one of those bands that in my notes I said like I wish I could say that I found out about them through some zine or through like going to see them at some cool club or festival or something, but I can thank the algorithm for hearing about them, because around this time last year I was listening to a band called The Chisel a lot, who had released an album around that time, and some of their related acts. It's a whole thing going on in the UK. A lot of bands produced by Jonah Falco from the band Fucked Up.
So this is like
especially.
So this is like post-hardcore guitar
Well,
music
it's
that we're talking about here, bud. Or
for the most part, it's folks that were all like the Chisel and some of the related bands like Chubby and the Gang and Big Cheese. I think are the two that really pop off the top of my head as like some of the other bigger bands in that scene. They're all folks that were in sort of like, they were, you know, snotty kids playing in like loud, fast, angry hardcore bands in like 2008. And now they're all sort of entering their late 20s, early 30s era and discovering other forms of music. Like, for example, Chubby and the Gang, it's like a mix of like punk and like, you know, Nick Lowe.
Okay.
Or like they're really into like, yeah, like pub rock style stuff. And like the Chisel are more of like a straight ahead street punk band, but like, you know, they've got their little catchy parts. And anyway, the more I listen to these bands, the more this album, No Sense, No Feeling by High Vis
Yes.
from 2019 started coming up. And it really started growing on me. And then I found out they were coming out with a new album in September and got very excited. And yeah, it's ex-members of a band called Dirty Money, who again, yeah, they were one of these like kids playing loud, fast music in 2009 who were kind of...
Is this all like kind of British music that's in...
This is all like a specific like UK scene.
Okay, cool, man.
Like,
so, like
a friend of mine on Labor Day weekend, a friend of mine from around here saw pretty much all of these bands at a festival called Static Shock Weekend in London over Labor Day week. He basically got a red eye across the Atlantic, went to 3 days of shows, came back, slept for a day, and went back to his HVAC business.
That is like some of the joys of like being middle-aged, that you like could potentially have the resources or even like the credit available to just say, yeah, I think I'm gonna, you know, do that thing that you know, is only gonna go off maybe this one time. That's dope, man. That's a cool connection there.
But yeah, so High Vis, their sound is kind of like a mix of, yeah, guitar driven, like post-punk kind of sounds in the 80s, like Joy Division or Echo and the Bunnymen, but they still got a little bit of a, you know, they still got an edge to them. Like, as part of my description, I added, you know, if the drummer from Joy Division occasionally wanted the crowd to have circle pits, as, you know, part of the description. And with this new album, Blending, they've been mixing almost like they've been taking it in a little more of a melodic direction a lot of the time and mixing in almost kind of like shoegaze style riffs. And their singer has been really open about this album being, you know, mostly written around him trying to seek out diagnoses for some mental health stuff that was going on. And like,
great to be transparent about it, man. Go for it.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and like
totally.
the lead song on the album, Talk for Hours, is basically his like therapy anthem.
Well, and again, just on that particular topic of mental health, it turns out the first band that I put in my list, the first, you know, Soul Glow, the singer, he's said in interviews and like actually like in the notes for that album, he thanks his therapist.
Nice.
So it's somebody, you know, who's again, I don't know, like, so these are young. These people are younger than us, right?
Exactly. Like these guys.
These people are proper millennials, Dan.
Yeah,
the people
exactly.
You're talking
They're
about,
proper in their 30s, folks.
They've eased into themselves. They know who they are. The music has some self-awareness to it, and some life experiences. But it's just like, dude, wait until you hit your 40s, and it's all fucking meaningless.
And I mean,
sorry.
That's one thing. That is one thing that this album is definitely like, it definitely, a lot of it is about getting older, and it's the kind of things that you only feel, you know, you only feel that much harder in your 40s. But you know, it's just, I thought it's the kind of thing I can appreciate, you know?
No, for sure. That's like the basis of some of my favorite music. Like,
exactly.
I like the whole I've turned the corner from my partying years, and now I'm dealing with other things, but I'm still fucked up. The Hold Steady are great at that.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Like just the let's just friggin', be true to the things that we liked before, kind of thing, right?
Exactly.
So,
and
that's dope, man.
Yeah, and I mean, like, there's a lot of lines throughout this album, like, sick and tired of seeing friends dying of their authenticity, and just, it's like stuff like that you can,
Oscar Wilde is proud.
Exactly.
Oscar Wilde's proud of that kid when he came up with that. Yeah.
But it's the description that I came up with them is, imagine if Dag Nasty was fronted by an angry, shouting Liverpudlian, mixed with Joy Division if their drummer really wanted the crowd to start a circle pit sometimes, sprinkled with occasional swirly guitar pedal detours and heavy working class pride in the lyrics. Like one of the other sort of lead songs in the album is a song called 0151. That's their Liverpool working class pride, where like they mention like specific like labor battles and stuff throughout the lyrics. And it's one of, like, I hear some people talk about this album, but I don't know what the kids are listening to these days. But I don't know. This is one of my favorites of 2022.
You've convinced me, man. And really, I think just as we're sort of having these conversations, I mean, part of the way that you described it speaks to why I thought it would be cool to record these kinds of conversations once every couple of weeks or whatever, because your rendering of it is really it's both things that I like, and I like the way that you have laid it out there. That's really freaking cool, man. Again, anything to do with 80s hardcore, I just kind of look at it now like, I just have a friggin' high school crush for sure on 80s and 90s hardcore. That's for me, like, anyway. But again, like, that was like our moment in a way. It's just like, you don't live in a place that's, big enough like to have most of the big acts. So it's just whatever's going on at friggin' St. Charbel's or, like whatever, Knights of Columbus or something. Like that was your friggin' evening, unless you were in sports. And before I run too far way off the track, I'm just going to say my older son now is 13 years old, and I'm just having like conversations with him now where it's like, I started smoking at your age. I wasn't doing the football thing. I was very, very disengaged from my school life. And I'm just like, and you're the opposite of that. And you just got to keep being the opposite of that. But like for me, like for my thing, like where that led to, the path that it put me on, is arguably some of the most awesome stuff, right? So I'm not going to talk too much about Soul Glow. I'll just jump over to my number one here. And because I've already kind of mentioned it, I'll just say, first of all, it's a very cool byproduct of this show, actually, because I've actually, it's caused me to do like, oh, well, what about, like do a little news search or whatever. So Soul Glow, I didn't realize right around the time their awesome frigging album, The Asper Problems, came out, that their bass player had an abuse scandal. Basically, romantic partners being manipulated and in some cases calling out rape. So, he removed himself from the band immediately, and the band has carried on. But I read this article from The Guardian where they're just like, we don't even know if we're going to be a band much longer. But it seems like it seems like they've got it together, because they are, doing some touring. They opened for Avail at a venue, like when they played Richmond, I think.
Oh yeah, I saw Avail did a reunion show recently.
Yeah, a few of them, man. Him and Tim, Avail and Tim Barry. I follow, both entities, and I'm like, that's some cool stuff right there too, right? So they're like out there, they're still putting out stuff, and they did a best of the singer and the drummer did their best of 22 lists in
Okay.
Brooklyn Vegan. It just came out like a
Mm.
week ago. So I just saw that and I'm like, there's no friggin' way I have time to chase down any of this now. But it all sounds dope.
Yeah.
And the last thing I guess I would say is like, just do yourself a favor and check out their videos, which is
Yeah.
why, we got the YouTube comp going on here. There's 3 videos from them, and like, seriously, just I said in the notes, I'm a white liberal, middle-aged record friggin' guy, and I friggin' love the Bad Brains. I don't worship them, so I'm just like, I'm the last person who should ever say anything about this, except it's friggin' awesome. Yeah, and yeah, Dan. I mean, is there anything else? Like, have you? So, did you catch this record when it came out at all? Or?
I've heard a bit. I've caught like the videos from it, and I was actually initially familiar with Soul Glow because of a YouTube channel called 2 Minutes to Late Night.
Okay.
That's done sort of like.
I think yes, I know what you mean. And they get the cover. They do the
they do the bedroom. They do bedroom covers. And,
yes. I've watched a couple of things on that. I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, some of those folks have been involved. I watch those pretty regularly. I quite enjoy those.
Dope.
And
so they were on it.
And yeah, some of those folks have been involved with some of the
Okay. It's like they're
those
it's like
covers. So
Philadelphia hardcore. And I don't know, man. The city of Philadelphia in culture to me just seems like this crazy wild ass place. In terms of their sports fanaticism, in terms of, I mean, imagine being there. Are they the cradle of democracy, or is that like?
I know the Liberty Bell is there.
Yes. Okay.
If you want to read kind of a cool book about the early scene in Philadelphia, there's a book called I'm Not Holding Your Coat.
Okay.
It's written by a woman named Nancy Burrell, who used to book, like, she was booking like community hall shows for the Dead Kennedys when they were touring, and like booking shows for like Bad Brains and artists like that in the early 80s. It's a great read. Like, I'm friends with her on social media because of it, and she's just like this like lovely older, like, I think, late 50s, maybe early 60s, like high school teacher in Boston now, who just wrote this book about it, when she used to put on hardcore shows in Philly in the early 80s, and like that's how she met her husband, who she's still with, who played guitar in like a straight edge band in Boston at the time. And like, it's a really great read that gets very into like Philly being an intense place as well.
I find it fascinating and cool that I can make what I think is a pretty casual reference in the middle of a thing, and you can just be like, I read a book about it and I know the author on social media. This is interesting terrain for me here, Dan.
Yeah.
On that note, what do we got here for your second one, my man? We got Poison Ruin.
Speaking of Philadelphia,
okay,
Poison Ruin are also from Philadelphia. They started out as a solo project for a guy named Mac Kennedy. During the pandemic, he put out a couple of cassettes under the name Poison Ruin that got reissued on a label called, I think on Drunken Sailor Records, which has put out a bunch of other good stuff, including a band called Bougie Boys from Halifax, who are worth checking out. But anyways, this EP, Not Today, Not Tomorrow, is the first thing that Poison Ruin's really recorded and released as a full band. And I first found out about them from Instagram, because I saw their name on a bunch of flyers for a band from Edmonton that I really like called Homefront, who
digital flyers, I'm assuming.
Well, it was just like digital photos of flyers for shows happening.
You might have been you might have been wandering the streets of Edmonton. Just wanted to clarify.
Who knows? Well, I mean, I do have family in that area, but anyways, but yeah, I saw that they'd been doing a bunch of shows with this band Homefront from Edmonton, who I quite like. They put out a really good record called Think of the Lie in December of 2021. That's worth checking out if you get a chance. And yeah, in one of these episodes, I want to get a chance to talk about that band further at some point,
Cool.
because
Yeah,
I think
I
they're
just
good.
awesome. And I just got a quick random question.
Yeah.
You did have a show on CHSR for how long, Dan?
Well, initially
Initially or in total?
In total, well, it was the first run was 4 years, and then basically anytime I moved back to Fredericton, I ended up on CHSR again.
I didn't realize you were at it for quite that long.
I started I started just after grade 10, and then kept going like through the 2 years of high school, and then the 2 years I went to St.
That's freaking cool that you punched into it that early, dude. In high school, I was not aware of that. Yeah.
Well, I don't know if you remember the high school radio station.
Oh yes. I did have a show on it, and our theme song, which we only got caught for playing once, was "Fuck School" by the Replacements. So
nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, I got involved with that pretty early on, and was on the quote unquote executive, and figured to learn how to do like an actual radio station, I'd get involved with CHSR too. Plus, when I was a little kid, my favorite TV show was WKRP in Cincinnati, and I always wanted to do something with radio.
Did you ever watch Switchback? Was that ever?
Oh yes, definitely. I referenced Switchback within the last 2 weeks.
Man, I mean, I'm not trying to unpack, the whole deal here. I just as you were talking, we both had the CHSR experience.
Oh, for sure.
Okay.
I'm
sure this is going to come up again. I'm positive.
Yeah, I was the annoying kid that would only hang out at the station at night because I was scared of the program director, because she yelled at me for playing stuff with swearing during the daytime. And anytime I've seen her since, she'll bring that up and we'll laugh about it. But I was terrified of her when I was a teenager. So it was like I'd only show up at the radio station after dark. But I would just, because I was a nerd who wasn't going out and partying all the time, I just hung out in the record library there for a significant portion of my teen years.
It seeps into your pores, man. It just becomes part of who you are, and eventually it's just what? This is my atomic structure. What do you expect?
Exactly. I was just hiding out in there making mixtapes, and I had my own show on Saturday nights, late night, basically, that ended around the time the bar got out.
I'm telling you, man.
At the social club. So sometimes when I got out of my radio show, I'd be run. There were times where Neil Thompson and I would have to run from guys from Gagetown because they didn't like the look of us, young ruffians, when we were coming out of my radio show and stuff. But it was just, that was something I did, and I started showing up on Sunday nights when Grant Forsyth was doing the punk rock show that Gumby eventually took over.
Legends here, people.
Yeah, exactly. I was just
the
annoying teen that would rise from the floor like Hecubus, being hey, can I borrow that Screeching Weasel album?
Screeching Weasel. Oh, man. The things that there's these certain paradigms within the Fredericton thing. There's CHSR, that's kind of its own institution. There's
Molly's.
Molly's, that's another friggin' institution of the era.
Molly's is going to be referenced in the other idea that I had, the 5 bands that changed your life for better or worse. Molly's.
Well, that's going to be the next episode.
Yeah. For sure.
That's your purview, dude. Man, all the Frederictonian isms are just coming out here, man. This is dope.
Yeah. To try and pull it back to the topic at hand here, I guess.
Back to the Poison Ruin band.
Yeah, back to the Poison Ruin record. So this is a 3-song EP. Yeah. And one of the things I love about this band is they basically sound like 3 bands. And switch between the 3 bands.
So is this among the cohort of musicians that you were speaking of in the first record?
No, this is these folks, they're just at the level where they're able to pay someone to book shows for them instead of them making all the phone, them paying the cell phone bills. They're still pretty new. They played a festival that some folks I know organized in Montreal a little while ago, and You know, they were like middle of the bill kind of deal. But I think they've just got a cool little mix of sounds to me, because it's like you can tell that they really like sort of proto thrash, like stuff like Hellhammer and like Celtic Frost and those sorts of bands, but they also really like Wire and like kind of that like borderline between like sort of later era like punk and new wave and post punk. And then they've got these cool little synth interludes too, that just sound like something like it's a whole there's a whole scene subgenre called dungeon synth that's been going on for a while. That it's just basically imaginary soundtracks to like low budget action movies for the most part.
I like it
Of
already.
just like spooky synth interludes, and these guys also pepper in a lot of those as well. And like the description, the song that I chose for the little mixtape, or for the mix, which is the title track, "Not Today, Not Tomorrow." I described it as that it opens with the sonic equivalent of like the sun glinting off the tip of a medieval warrior's blade in like some old like Golan Globus produced like just terrible low budget action movie. But then all of a sudden this big drum roll comes in, and you think and these guitar parts, and you think it's going to be like a total metal rager, and then it switches to this kind of like nice boppy, like almost like post-punk groove for a while, and then gets fast again. And then they just kind of they take songs sort of as long as they need to go, which is the best way I can describe it. That's something. There's certain bands I know that you referenced that somewhere on one of your lists. You mentioned Titus Andronicus.
Yeah.
In one of your extended lists, and that's one of the things I love about them is they seem to they'll play a song as long as it needs to go,
and they'll
wherever
just
it needs to
keep
go.
on going, or like no means no, or something.
Exactly. Like here's
a 6.5 minute song, and you're gonna love it. Yeah.
Yeah. And it has peaks and valleys and interludes, and like I quite enjoy this band. And then sort of the way that the record moves along, by the end they're just at this nice little mid-tempo stomper that almost sounds like Amoebix or one of these like later Crass Records type bands, but just like a good mid-tempo stomper that is still getting in like a little of the punk influence, a little of the metal influence. But I get the impression.
Well,
like I said, I think
it sounds dope, is what I think it sounds like.
And they're the LP re-release of the 2 demos is a lot of fun too. It's got a lot more of like the synth interludes and stuff on it. But so that was my number 2.
Awesome. You know what, dude? I'm just looking at the time, and I'm thinking we should each do our top 3.
Okay.
Because at which point we'll be clocking in at nearly an hour on our episode 0, and that may be asking a bit much of our excellent audience.
That's perfect.
So we got our top. So we'll do our top 3 here, and then we'll have our extensively awesome notes.
Exactly.
I've seen Dan's, and mine are less awesome, but we've got a pretty. No, man, this whole thing. Like, again, I don't mean to go off on like an educator tangent, but like when I saw this as like sort of almost a collaborative piece of writing again with somebody who's like good at writing, I'm just like, aha, because again, and in my kind of nerddom, I get a kick out of that. And I think actually, Dan, where you were just kind of going with Poison Ruin, sort of ending off on that straight off kind of punk note, I'm just going to say that for me, Hot Water Music, again, it's like it's the most they're a mainstream band, okay? Like
still,
they're a highly mainstream band, and I think it's frigging incredible to me that after 30 or 35 years, that they can put out one of their best albums, like out of any in their catalog. It stands up. I mean, it's as friggin' to me as awesome as like the split with Leatherface. I mean, really, it's just it's so locked into what it is. And if you want to talk about just like dudes who are in their middle or late 40s who
Yep.
have been doing the same thing since they were 15 years old. It's like, for me, it's like, I sort of look at these people who have had these, artistic public lives
Yeah.
doing their thing. And I'm like, these guys are like my age, like
Oh, yeah.
it's interesting to think of it, or they're younger, a lot of them, but it's just like, man, if I was doing something and that was my whole thing from the age of, 15 or 16, I mean, go for it, man. Whatever
Yeah.
joy and success you can pull from that. And to me, hot water music is just like they're writing about things and experiences that I feel like I can relate to. Weirdly, Sorry, Dan, I cut you off. You were going to say something.
Well, no, I was going to say that was a reason that I picked one of my other picks that will get cut for time, the Hammered Halls album.
That's the one I was going to say I hadn't heard of anything on there. I actually have heard that. That's an Epitaph band, is it not?
No, it's Discord Records. It's Ian Mackay's brother, Alec Mackay. And then like the guitarist from the Makeup and a bunch of those bands, the drummer from Titus Andronicus, and yeah. Anyways,
I saw.
Yeah, that's the reason I'd wanted to bring that. One of the things, one of the points I want to make is just that they're a band that's literally, it's like they're like the archetypal DC band, and they have it's just like all of those Discord bands, sort of, crushed into a flying diamond, but it's from people that have literally been like helping evolve that sound from the start. But anyways,
no, man, it's friggin' thank you very much for pointing that one out, because I follow Discord's Instagram, and I saw, now that you mentioned it, I saw the flyer for that record, and I remember seeing the going, that's the drummer from Titus Andronicus.
Yes, who also used to play with Ted Leo, who is great if you haven't heard Ted Leo before. I think it's someone I think you'd quite enjoy.
I think I probably would too, because I've heard the name before. Ted Leo and the Pharmacist?
Yes, Ted Leo and the Pharmacist. He's also got some stuff with Amy Mann as under the name The Both.
Okay. Well, I just wrote that down on my little notey book here, so I'll be sure to follow up on that. And honestly, I guess the last thing I would just say about hot water music and this latest record is that, for me, I really, really am a big fan of Chris Wallard and his solo records. He's put out 3 or 4 just amazing friggin' records. It's gone from Chris Wallard and the Ship Thieves to just Ship Thieves, and they don't tour. I guess it's sort of like with Bad Religion, where Greg Ginn be friggin' no, he's the guitar
Hetson,
player.
The other one.
The guy
Greg Hetson
who
was the
owns
guitar player,
Epitaph.
wasn't it? Isn't that Greg Hetson? It's one of the Gregs.
Brett Garowitz.
Oh yeah, Brett Garowitz. Sorry.
Brett Garowitz. Okay.
Sorry, I'm sure I have lost cred in some people's eyes.
I never had any cred. I can't believe I had to flail like that. So it's like he plays on the albums, but then he doesn't tour, right? So that seems to be the paradigm for them now. And I friggin' I went and got this crow, this tattoo is actually from the Ship Thieves album from last year, Eruption, which is just friggin' sick. So that's straight up punk. I mean, I just there was no way I wasn't going to be able to include that. So. And now, what do we got here for you? We got something else here.
Yeah, we'll go for. I'll do my third pick, which this was my one where I fudged it, and I kind of chose a collection of releases from the members of a group, a collection of solo albums from artists who also perform together as a group. That group being Griselda from Buffalo, New York, with the core members being Benny the Butcher, Conway the Machine, and West Side Gun, who. Benny the Butcher's.
Love the names. I like these kids already, man. Whoever they are.
These kids, and that's one of the things about Griselda is they're like old man rap is the best way I could describe it. They're all, I think, late millennial, I think West Side's in his early 40s maybe, or like around 40, and the other two are in their late 30s, and were in their 30s when they started releasing music.
Qualifies as old man rap. That's dope, man.
Well, it's also the fact that like they a lot of the artists they collaborated with, like, you know, they'll do stuff with like members of the Wu-Tang Clan and like Busta
Legit.
Rhymes.
Okay.
And one of the first sort of Griselda related tracks that I ever really got into is there's a Conway song called Lemon that's him and Method Man that came out in 2021. That was quite, yeah, just very impressive. Just like grimy, sick. Like you listen to it and you make a face, kind of like gritty.
Did you ever see Method Man as an actor on The Wire?
Oh yeah, he's done some great stuff, like all his stuff on The Wire. I'm trying to think of other things. I've seen him in quite a few things.
I just like that. Yeah, I just like got, you know, I just gotten into the rap and the hip hop music kind of lately, and
yeah,
one of my first Amazon splurges with that was I'm gonna get as much Wu-Tang as I can. So
yeah, and I thought I picked this because I thought you might enjoy these guys. But yeah, they all released solo albums in 2022. Benny the Butcher released Tana Talk 4.
Damn.
Conway the Machine released God Don't Make Mistakes, and actually did a show in Halifax, and I wasn't able to make it, and it got canceled due to just pandemicness going on, and then rescheduled, and I wasn't able to make it, and it was kind of a bummer. And then Westside Gunn released 2 mixtapes. Peace Fly God, which is one that he apparently recorded in 2 days after returning, I think it was from either an art gallery launch, because he's very into like promoting the visual, like young up and coming visual artists and like fashion designers and that sort of thing as well. He's definitely like, this guy is in his he's been around for a few years. He's, I think, one of the last artists that like Shady Records really put any effort into promote, you know, sort of last artist they really promoted, and like worked with artists like MF Doom and a bunch of others.
My kid has asked me about MF Doom. I'm not cool.
MF Doom is if your kid's getting into MF Doom, he's on the right.
Postmodern rapper par excellence is what
exactly. I like, right? Your kid's on the right track if he's asking about MF Doom.
Yeah.
But anyways, I first got into these guys because they had showed up in a segment on the Desus and Mero show when that still existed, the late night talk show. I don't know if you're familiar with that at all.
I'm not.
That's another one of those, just like the internet, or like, you know, seeing where people go because of the internet, where the host, it was a late night talk show on the Showtime network in the States for a few years, but one of the hosts, Desus, he used to post on a message board, the hip hop message board I lurked on a lot in like the mid-aughts, on the band The Roots' website, okplayer.com. So it's like anytime I saw the show, I was like, hey, it's that dude that used to post on OK Player's talk show. But anyways, they'd had Benny the Butcher and Conway the Machine do a little interview segment on the show, and I kind of was sort of familiar with them, and it really inspired me to go check out more of their music. So the Griselda group album that came out in 2019, WWCD, was one that I listened to a lot. And then, this year they all put out solo records. Their sound is very much like a classic New York hip hop sound. Like they do, you know, they've done collaborations with like folks like DJ Premier, you know, in the past little while. And like I said, several members of the Wu-Tang Clan and folks like that. And really, like, their sound is definitely inspired by, like Wu-Tang or Mobb Deep. And, you know, the way that Wu-Tang used Kung Fu references as sort of a through line through a lot of their stuff. All the guys from Griselda are really into pro wrestling. And it shows up through their, you know, like they all have several songs that are references to either wrestlers or like, you know, just like wrestling memes or events or that sort of thing. And I mean, like, I'm wearing my Motorhead Jushin Thunder Liger crossover shirt right now, sitting in the rec room of my house that's covered in like signed pictures of wrestlers that my girlfriend's gotten at various events she's traveled to, you know, in that same like, hey, we're adults and we can go do stuff way.
It
Um,
resonates
and
with you where you happen to be
exactly,
in your
and it's
life
like
right now.
so many that's like at so many like larger wrestling events, if you look in the crowd, usually you'll see West Side Gun in front row, like wearing like a ridiculous amount of gold chains with a drink in his hand, just like super into the event. Like there's stuff AEW, that's the promotion that I watch fairly regularly, that's like the newer kind of cooler, I guess, a little more with it, run by a slightly less crazy billionaire promotion. That when they did a show in Buffalo recently, the the guys from Griselda bought out like the entire front row of one side of the camera and just had their extended families members there. And then there was a wrestler from Buffalo was actually winning a title belt that night, and they had West Side Gun accompany him to the ring and to do one of the songs off their group album, a song called Dr. Birds, just sort of rap his verse from Dr. Birds, leading this guy Daniel Garcia to the ring. And it was apparently, a big deal for both of them. And the track that I picked out to go on the playlist here, that was from West Side Gun's 10 album, it's, I guess what you call a posse cut, sort of a large group track called Red Death, which is a reference to Red Death, Daniel Garcia, who's the wrestler that he got to accompany to the ring that time, who's a good friend of his. And that's got all 3 core members of Griselda plus, their extended universe, I guess you could say, all doing tracks on it. And it's, it's 10 minutes long.
Man, this is
but
like narrative within narrative within narrative here.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on.
Exactly. And I thought it was cool that like the three artists' different albums, like they all have fairly it's like a fairly mainstream end of hip hop when it comes down to it, even if it is sort of inspired by like more of an older style. But like they all have their own takes on the subject matter. Like a big part of Benny the Butcher's album is like, hey, maybe the flashy stuff isn't as worth it as I thought it was. Here's how, if you want to get out of that sort of life, here's a good way, here's some exit strategies you might want to pursue. And then Conway the Machine's album has a lot more like introspective topics. The lead single was a song called Stressed that is, again, it's sort of a song about, a lot of it is sort of like going out trying to, seek professional help regarding things. And the 2 West Side Gun releases are more him, like I said, it's more him moving into his curator phase, like showcasing a lot of like younger artists that he's helping promote. And like even like one of the albums begins with like an interlude that's just him at an art auction buying a painting for this one of these art shows that he does every year. That it's just, it's like I said, that's more his like curatorial phase of things. But again, it's like I said, there's some releases from the year that I thought were kind of could be combined almost into one big.
It's like when Kiss put out those 4
exactly,
records,
yeah,
right?
the 4,
like Ace
Frehley, and the Melvins did the same thing, I think.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
So anyway, that's my 3. I'll
respect, man. No, that's fantastic. The way you described it, it's like there's this, what I like about, the way that you kind of brought yours out is that you were really kind of speaking to the communities around these, like it seems like, how we all get access to our stuff. I've got my probably 3 or 4 media outlets that I follow, or social media outlets. But then sometimes, you kind of find out about things kind of after the case.
Yeah.
And this is where, with my last one, the Replacements live in Toronto. Again, I just would not be the person to really say at this point, like, it's just like, Kiss. It's like, it's that kind of thing for me. It's just like, if they have any kind of release out, they've had a lot of that tour that followed that reunion or whatnot. I don't have many regrets about shows I didn't get to. I guess I probably, were it not for the arduous personal circumstances around me at the time, which would have prevented it from happening. It's just nice that it's out there on an official document. I know people who actually went to that show. Kane Harrison went to that show.
Yeah.
Mike Beattie went to that show. Cynthia Craig, I'm pretty sure. You know,
Wow,
some of
Mike
the
Beattie.
yeah, some of the you know, New Brunswick folk who
Exactly.
ended up in Toronto. And man, they just described it as just like being absolutely killer. The whole show has actually been available, like just recorded off the board and piped into
Nice.
YouTube, you know, like the next day kind of thing. So I guess I wouldn't even much have beyond to say the fact that I think it's really cool. One thing I noticed on Discogs, I did not notice it anywhere else. So who knows? But on the Discogs entry for this double live record, it mentions this is actually a series of planned
Oh wow.
like double live releases because
Nice.
you know, they put out something like 40 shows or something like that from, you know, over the space of 3 years when they were doing the tour and the quasi reunion. I mean, again, you know, I wouldn't need to get every one of them at all. And I, you know, but depending on how they did it, it could be cool. And what I really like, again, is the fact that, you know, within the Replacements universe, their first show back after 22 years away was in fact in Toronto. And it's cool that in terms of legacy curation or whatever, that they're seeing fit to give it kind of another life in this in its format. So yeah, Dan, I think we've done a hell of a good job today,
I think we have too for our first, you know, just
for the first go round,
the first episode. Yeah, exactly.
Well, for our 0th episode, as a matter of fact. So I think actually, Dan, I've really, you know, apart from just, you know, getting a kick out of being able to speak with you because, you know, man, it's been a while.
It has been.
Really, apart from, you know, just you get so used to just kind of seeing people on the dopamine.
Exactly. Yeah. Seeing the feed.
Oh, I've seen this tiny little, you know, representation of this person and not interacted with it for 5, 6 Zuckerberg years, you know, whatever. So I just, you know, it's so the fact that, you know, we can sort of have this kind of conversation and you know, if a few people beyond even our immediate group, you know, former people or current people or whatnot get a kick out of it, that's fine. I'll just say that in terms of like getting this onto something that people will access beyond just my website, that I swear to God, have it as a Christmas project where I'm going to find out how to get the MP4 file into a fashion that it can actually appear somewhere, you know, that people actually can like, oh, I like punk podcasts, you know, and then find it.
Like somewhere, somewhere available. And
you've put together some songs into Spotify, right? You've got a Spotify list of some of your tracks.
Exactly.
I put together a YouTube list, which includes, you know, my, like, I have my 5, but then I kind of had an extended list. So I don't know if we're going to hybridize those. We'll definitely have links to both of them. Honestly,
I was just going to say I had some honorable mentions on mine as well that I might throw onto my list.
You ought to, man. We can have like our sort of respective things, and that will certainly be enough for people to check it out, right?
Exactly.
Okay, cool. So that'll be appearing up on the website. We'll be doing the transfer of from the Google Doc into the WordPress. And honestly, Dan, I've really enjoyed, you know, even beyond this conversation, the whole process of putting together these notes and whatnot. So it sounds to me like we already have a topic for our next episode, which we're thinking like what, every 2 weeks?
Yeah, I think another 2 weeks would be good to. Yeah, it'd be good to have another 2 weeks to.
I gotta tell you,
all that together. Like I know what I wanted. Like it's it's basically it's mine sort of mine kind of became the like how I was able to survive to my 30s list, um, including the artist that got me in across the line.
Well, I'm telling you, man, like, so, like I said, like, with my quasi academic one or whatever,
Yeah.
it's like my co-host person chooses the topic and chooses the
Yep.
timeline. And
Hmm.
so I'm happy to kind of replicate that.
Yep.
I'll just say thanks, Dan, for agreeing to this. It's been a blast, and
Hmm.
hopefully, the first of many. So I guess I'll
Yeah.
just say before ending the recording, thanks to everybody who's checking this out, and we appreciate you.
Thanks, everybody.
Take care. Bye.
Bye. Go.